We're going to have Tammie Bilyeu and Bob Mabe today. Tammie was a featured singer with the Stutterettes. And if any of you know Branson and music history country, you know the Stutterettes were a backup band for Mel Tillis. Also, we have Bob Mabe, who is literally one of the founders of the Baldknobbers. And I understand he's very hard to get off the stage once he gets going. I'd like to invite Tammie to come up and start the show today. Thank you, Tammie.
Wow, it's a good-looking group out here, and it's so much fun to be here with so many people who share the love of music, as music has just been a part of my life forever. My name is Tammie, as he told you. I am a Bilyeu and I'm a Mabe. So therefore, if you know the Bilyeus and the Mabes, you know that not very many of us get away with not singing. We're going to sing sometime or another in our lives. But I feel very blessed that as a very, very young little girl, about this high, I was able to sing with my uncles in Branson with the Baldknobbers. And I sang there 13 years with my mom and my dad and all of my uncles and cousins, and we'd run around that place like crazy. Bob Mabe was the first person to hand me a paycheck, and I have to contribute him to the reason that I'm still in this industry today. I don't know that I would be had I not ever got to be with my uncles down in Branson. And I'll have to tell you, I've done a lot of speaking engagements, but this is probably the first time I've stood alone and had to just talk about myself. So when I got to thinking, you know, maybe I should write down some notes. There's just so many things about my music career that I would love to share, but there's just not enough time. So I'm going to try to give you some highlights, and starting with the Baldknobbers, being a little bitty girl on that stage. You know, that was probably, when I look back, music to me is happiness. We made music to make people happy, and when you're on that stage and you're looking out at the audience and you see smiles, it makes you feel good. It doesn't matter what you feel like when you walk out on that stage. Music makes people happy, and therefore, if you're getting to share your music and you see people smiling and enjoying it, it just makes you feel good all over. And our parents, by the way, my sidekick didn't get to come today. Tanya is the other half of the Stutterette, and she didn't get to be here today, so I feel a little lost without her, so I'm just going to pretend like she's standing here. But as starting our career with the Baldknobbers, as a matter of fact, that's where I met Mel Tillis. As I think I was about 7 years old, but Bob would have artists come in to open our seasons. So they would come in the spring, and we had Tammy Wynette and Porter and Dolly and Mel Tillis, and I just remember as a little girl sitting, we would get to sit in front of the stage, down in the floor. You know, we got to be right up front and look up at these great country classics, and I, to this day, look at those people with just such big eyes and a big heart, because they're just amazing in this music industry. I think classic country is wonderful. As a matter of fact, that I still sing classic country. But I remember staring up at Mel Tillis from the floor and thinking that he was a great entertainer. And he carried me out to his bus, because he actually got to hear us sing too, because we did like 30 minutes of opening. And he told me, he said, you know what? I'm going to see you in Nashville someday. So the day that Mel hired my sister and I told him that story, and he's like, oh my word, you're that little girl? I said, yeah, that's me. And I said, but you know what the best thing about this story is? You told me I was going to have to go to Nashville, but I said, you came here. So that's just pretty cool. So when he would introduce us, a lot of times he would use that story. And so Bob thank you for giving us music in our life such as you did. Now, our parents, being a Bilyeu, Dad was a minister, Southern Baptist minister, so I actually learned to sing in church and at home and in the car, and I never remember having one lesson. We never had any lessons, but here's how we were taught. You just rear back and let her fly. So if you ever get a chance to hear me sing James Ingle, I pretty much do that, right? We just kind of rear back and let her fly. James is a drummer. James Ingle is a drummer for our current show that Tanya and I, Stutterettes, have in Branson. We do a gospel show at 2 o'clock on Sunday, and then we do a country show that night at 7 o'clock, and James is part of that, and he's an amazing musician, so make sure you come back and listen to him in March, right? March? But let me go back a little bit. Being a Bilyeu, we did a lot of singing in church, and I'll tell you a funny story. Rear back and let her fly has kind of kicked me a couple of times, but we would sing with our family in nursing homes, and we would go to different churches and sing. And one day we were in this nursing home, and this little lady was having a really good time listening to us sing, and music was making her happy, and she would clap her hands and just cry a little bit and get into the music of Jesus, and pretty soon I sang a solo line that goes kind of, then the silent reaper comes, and she said, shut up! That's a true story. And they actually wheeled her out. So sometimes music is, guess it depends on how you get it out there, but some people might be offended by my loud voice, but that's just how we were taught. But Dad put us on the piano bench, and I remember, I think the first song that my older sister and I sang, and by the way, we're from here, in the Highlandville, Spokane area, and Dad pastored a church up here in Springfield for a while, but everywhere we went, we sang. And I think the first song we ever sang, and we sang it in harmony, and I was 2, or actually probably 3, and I probably did the lead, and my sister was 2 years older. She sang the harmony, and we sang, oh, let the sun shine in. Remember that one? It's Flintstones, I think. But anyway, that's the first song I ever remember singing. With the Baldknobbers, we had a chance to do a lot of recording, and we recorded here in Springfield. As a matter of fact, as a child, I'm on 13 albums, and I have all of those in archive, and it's so much fun to get them out and listen. People accuse me of sounding like a chipmunk, but whatever. But we recorded the first Baldknobber albums with American artists. Some of you might remember Joe Higgins with American Artist, and then we did albums with Pat Shikani. And like I said, I got to meet Mel through the Baldknobbers, and I had a dream. My dad used to say, Tam, what are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? And I said, well, Daddy, I'm going to sing on the Grand Ole Opry. And so the first time I did get to sing on the Grand Ole Opry, it was quite surreal. As a matter of fact, I remember complaining on the bus on the way there, because sometimes when we'd have to get on that tour bus, we didn't want to. You know, we had kids at home, and so sometimes we did Branson with Mel 2 shows a day, and let me tell you, that's quite a toll on your body and voice at times. But like I said, you get up there and you see the people and see how happy music makes them, and it all becomes real to you, and it's sweet to your soul to see that happen. But on the way to Nashville, I'm thinking, oh, I'd just rather be home this weekend. And then you get there and you're standing on the Grand Ole Opry, and you realize you got this barn behind you, and the curtain opens, and you think of your grandma and your grandpa and my uncles and people that mean so much to me, my parents who grew up on the Grand Ole Opry and watching it. And I remember watching it in the living room of my grandparents' home. And it became very real to me, and I feel very, very blessed to have had the opportunity to do those kinds of things. And the coolest thing about Mel is well, he loved his stutterettes, and he treated us like his daughters. And he was just a wonderful man to travel with. And we got to be featured. We sang duets with him, and also just getting to sing with my sis was amazing. But one of the coolest things that he ever did for us, and it was quite a surprise, we were doing the Grand Ole Opry with him, and typically we did backup with him when we did Grand Ole Opry. You got to do 2 songs. You had a certain set. And one night, we didn't know it, but he had told others that he was going to give up his spot, and Tanya and I were going to get to do his segment on the Grand Ole Opry. And so curtain opens, and it's our turn, and there's you guys know about the center circle in the Grand Ole Opry where the greats have stood, and he said, you know what, I really want to introduce you to these 2 gals. And Tanya and I are like, oh, what is he doing? Because at the Opry you have set thing, and they want you to do exactly what they want you to do because you're on TV, you're on the radio, and he actually gave his segment to Tanya and I that night, and probably the coolest thing that's ever happened in my life, to get to stand there in what should have been his spot. And that just kind of shows you what kind of character he had, that he loved his band, the Statesiders, so much, and knew that he couldn't do it without us. That's a really cool guy. He told us one time, and I know I'm talking a little bit more about Mel than I probably should. I'm supposed to talk about me, but my career was Mel Tillis. It was Baldknobbers. It was church, or is church. I still love to sing in church. But we were standing beside him, and we were singing at a birthday party for a very strong writer in I always want to call him Harlan Howard Howard. He wrote Mel's first #1 hit. He also wrote Pam's first #1 hit. And we were doing his birthday bash, and Tanya and I were still just a little bit starstruck about all these people we were getting to see. And we're standing off the side of the stage and standing by Mel, and Billy Dean got up there to sing, and he was right when his song was #1. And of course we thought he was handsome too, but we're telling Mel, we're like, Mel, that is Billy Dean up there. Oh my gosh. And he just crosses his arms and he says, you're standing by a legend, and you sure don't act that way about me. Oh, wow, what a great man. And then the last time that we got to stand on the Ryman Auditorium was for his memorial. And what a great honor it was to get to perform with many, many great artists during that time, to pay tribute to such a wonderful entertainer, writer, funny man. He taught us so much in our career, and which leads me to Tanya and I recently, 2 years ago, were approached by a friend of ours in Branson, and he asked us if we would do the Sunday shows in Branson. And basically what that meant was we were going to do a 2 o'clock gospel show and a 7 o'clock country show. And that meant we had to cast it, we had to write it, we had to choose the songs, and we had to be there every Sunday. So for a while we're like, oh, I don't know if we want to get back into that again. But that has been a very cool part of our career, is getting to do something. It just kind of put us a little more out there, where we realize what the people who produce do, because we got a chance to hire our band, which I think we have one of the best bands around, and we got to fill the show with songs. And first we thought, how do you put on a gospel show? Well, we figured that out really quick, because gospel music to us is meaningful, and we wanted, when we do gospel music, we do it for the Lord. So we thought, how do you portray a show with gospel music? Well, it's really easy. You just get up there and you pretend like these people are in your home, and you sing songs that mean something to you, and it comes off. And our biggest compliment to us is when someone says they feel like they've been to church because they feel the music when they're there. Same with our country show at 7 o'clock. We try to do songs that mean something to us, and if you were to come, you're going to hear a lot of classic country music because that's where our heart is. We love classic country. I'm not bashing new country. I think there's a lot of good out there too, but I love classic music. We've done, like I said, we've done a lot of albums up here, but I have to tell you, the albums that we do now are produced and engineered by probably the best engineer around. I'm sorry if there's other engineers out here in the audience, but I'm kind of partial to this one. He actually talked to you a couple months ago, but my husband is back there. His name's Jamie Carter, and he's an amazing engineer, and so he does all of our albums now, and he's very supportive of what I do, and I'm so thankful to have someone who also loves music as I do as my soulmate. So, Jamie, there you go. I referenced you. But back to the Baldknobbers. Let's go back there. I, again, don't think I would be standing here if it weren't for, of course, my parents and the good Lord above and my uncles. They taught us how to do music the right way, and you choose songs that bless people. You choose songs that make them happy, and when they go home, they have a song in their heart, smile on their face. That's what we try to pull across with our music. I believe Mel did that too. Mel made a lot of people laugh in his day. When he passed away, I said, golly, can you just imagine all the people that he's touched in his life with his music? And I hope that someday someone will say that about me. And I hope that they say it with a smile on their face and know how much I loved the music as much as they do listening to it. So, and I have two wonderful sons that are in the music business as well. And to be quite honest, I wasn't really sure I wanted them to be, because sometimes the music business can be tough. You get on that bus and you go a long ways away from home, and I'll tell you a quick story about the music business when you're on a tour bus. We lost our brakes on the Grapevine Mountain when I was with Mel. And my sister, like I said, she's my sidekick, and her husband was driving the bus, and my husband was sitting in the jump seat, and Mel Tillis was sitting right between them. And I saw Mel get up and come back to the table, and his big thing was always he twiddled his thumbs if he'd sit at the table like that. And I got this serious look on his face, and Tanya said, "Hey, Chris, is everything okay up there?" And he said, "Yes, baby, everything is fine." Well, we were on fire. And the Jake brake had gone out. We were flying down that mountain. But the good Lord got us all the way to the bottom. It was 7.5 mile mountain. And we were on our way to do shows in Washington State. And thankfully, like I said, the good Lord and my brother-in-law held that thing steady. We got to the bottom. And I think it was at that time that Tanya and I realized, that we could make music at home. And we were with Mel for another year. But we went on to Washington State, and the amazing thing about the people who listen to music, and that's why we all here in this room love music. And we showed up at Washington State and we walked out on stage 3 hours late. The audience stayed there, and it was an outdoor thing in some rodeo arena. And when we showed up on stage, we got almost a 5-minute standing ovation because they had been told what had happened. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the music business behind the scenes as well. But you know what? I've got to turn this over to my Uncle Bob, because I want you guys to be able to ask him questions and find out all about his life in music. So, Bob, will you come up here? Thank you for letting me have some time today. I love you more.
And follow her. Follow her. Anybody else want to come up and do it for me? Hey, my name's Bob Mabe. I've been entertaining ever since I was a pretty small boy. fact, a lot in church. My dad was a pastor of a church, and so we was raised in a pretty strict home. Dad was he's pretty strict on us, and I've had any of you had a few spankings? I've had a few spankings, you know, and I didn't need them, but, you know, they gave it to me anyway. But it's talking about things that you've done. Gosh, I could go on till midnight for starting this show. In fact, first thing we ever did, me and my brother Bill would sing in churches and play down there, pie suppers and stuff like that. And I never forget one time we said, had a new pastor in our church there at Highlandville, or had a new preacher. He wasn't a pastor, he just a preaching. We'd never seen him, didn't know it, but an old man, about 80-year-old John Brown. He loved Bill and I to sing. So he came to him and said, Bob, you guys sang for me this morning? And I said, well, the preacher, you have to ask him, and I don't know him either. So he went over and asked him, and so the preacher said, well, I don't know him, but I guess it'll be all right if they want to sing. So he called us up there and got to the stage, and he said, what are you going to sing, boys? I said, that song called Lonesome Valley. You got to walk that lonesome valley. You know that one. Well, he said, boys, I wouldn't sing that in church. Boy, you set the hair on two little boys. And so we changed song. I told Bill, hey, we won't sing that song. So we sang the song after church. Mr. Brown came to us and said, Bob, why didn't you sing my song? I said, the pastor told us not, preacher told us not to. He said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. He just said, don't sing that song in church. So he went up and got after the preacher. I mean, he really got Mr. Brown. 80-year-old went up and got after him. And he said, I thought he said, is he going to sing Lonesome Valley? Lonesome Cowboy. And so I said, I'd never heard the song Lonesome Cowboy. So he went back and really bawled him out. So me and Bill, we thought, man, we don't want to sing much anymore with a man like that. But I've sang ever since I was knee-high to duck. We was probably I was 6 and he was 5 probably. So we've sang that long. Raised in a family of 14. And I asked Mom the day before she passed away, I said, Mom, out of all them 11 kids, I was the best looking, wasn't I? Mom laying there in her bed and no teeth in her mouth. She said, nope. All my kids was good looking. So when you have a mom like that, and there was 11 of us kids, I can remember being at home and sleeping in a back room where if it snowed and blowed just right, it'd blow in on our bed. And the worst thing I ever did in that bedroom one time, we had a piece of paper that was hanging down. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. Just a kid, and we'd went up and talked Dad taking us to a movie over at Ozark. And it's a movie of Japanese people bombing the United States, and when they bombed Hawaii, and all these people, and they're diving down, and how the movies that have Japanese grinning real big, you know, that they're killing people and bombing. And I got to dreaming that they's getting me. So I got up and I started hollering, and Mom, here come Mom with a lamp. I'll never forget. Now the lamp was just a bouncing up and down. She'd come to see it about me, but that's all that happened. I had a dream that Jap was coming down to get me. So that's one of my dreams. Anybody ever dream dreams like that? I've never dreamed of nothing like that. But the music business is what you want to know about. I've started it, and I was on KWTO 5.5 years, 6:15 of the morning. I've drank a lot of orange juice and vinegar and everything else to try to, you all know, early in the morning you don't have a clear voice. But I had to be up there for 5.5 years. So then they came by and said that give us a month notice that all live talent would be gone on KWTO. Slim Wilson and George Jones and all them people you remember. And they said we're going to be take all just go to records. So I wanted to keep playing, singing. So I started the Baldknobbers. And my 3 brothers asked them if they would join us. And they all said, yeah, they would. But in Branson wasn't much going on then. So I thought, well, we can start a show. So we found the the old theater was above, upstairs, and they said they'd lease that to us for so much a month. So we went ahead and took it, and then a little later they made a police department out of it after that, and then after that they tore it down. We done such a bad job they tore it down. No, it just that took it. So we went down on the lakefront and rented a building, and so we only played about 2 or 3 nights a week, but we had to do something else. So we played at Silver Dart City. During the day, we'd play all day long at Silver Dart City, and then that night we'd play in the Shepherd Hills play. I was the sheriff in the play, and then we played for the square. The Baldknobbers played for a square dance scene at the Shepherd Hills, and then we'd play about 3 nights downtown till they started picking up. And we'd always say that if we didn't have 20 people, we wouldn't show. And I'll never forget one night we had 14 there, and all that showed up. So I told the crowd, I said, well, we've decided quite a while back that we wouldn't play if we didn't have at least 20 people. And these people from Iowa, I'll never forget, they just begged us to say, we've heard about the Baldknobbers and we want to see them. Would you go ahead? Some of us will pay extra if you'll go ahead and do a show. I said, no, we wouldn't do that. I think we was charging $1 a person. 50 cents for, I still got a brochure saying $1 for big ones and 50 cents for little ones. Now that's the way we advertised it. I think I've still got a brochure, but we went out and done them a show that night, and there's some highway. They really wanted, said they'd heard so much about the Baldknobbers, and that was the first show, of course, in Branson, 1960. April the 7th, I think it was, the first show in Branson, Missouri, and it started growing after we went down on the lakefront. It started growing, and the old skating rink built it. There's an old skating rink building there, and Virgil Taylor had it. And the city, some way or other, was making them close it up. So I went down and talked to Virgil about the theater. It's a big, long theater because it was being a roller skate. So he said, oh my, yeah, I'd let you have it. I don't want to tear it down. So he told me who'd go see one of the fathers up at Branson, the city fathers. And some of them talked to him, and I knew him. He'd been a basketball referee, so I knew about it in high school. I knew him from that. So I went and I said, could we have this building if you'd go ahead and not have him tear it down? And he said, well, Bob, I know you well, and I'll have to city fathers, and we have a meeting, well, I'll see. So he called me and said, we'll let you guys have it instead of tearing it down. So we fixed it up, and it's that big, long building, and I worked at nights. I was on the road selling at that time of a day in a truck. So I'd go down to work till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I put sheetrock, or not sheetrock, but what do you call it? Wire. Well, not wire, but wall, stuff on the wall. So I went down and rolled that stuff out on up until about 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I got laid down and went and done my route and fixed it up. So I put on one side of the theater, I put this stand-up air conditioner. Well, I could go down about, have somebody go in and turn it on about noon. Well, about showtime, it would be cool in that theater, and we'd fill it up. There's this fill up of people by showtime. So, but by halftime of the show, you know what? It was so hot in there that I thought, oh, people's going to leave. Not one person would get up and leave. It got so hot in there, people would leave, and the men, especially on their back and their shirts, would all be wringing wet with sweat. But we was the only show there. They couldn't go to another show. So we entertained there at the Baldknobbers for about, how long was it before anybody else came in? Yeah, we was there about we was there from June to and then we got in our big theater that we built uptown Branson in 1968. And we got out of that downtown, but they did go in and tear the theater down just as soon as we got, well, some other people did from up around Kansas City was going to put a show in it. They didn't draw, so they got out and they tore it down. But that's in 1960 when we started. Some of you out there almost not even that age yet, are you? But we started the Baldknobbers April the 1st with, and then when we went out to our new theater, Then we all started April 1st with Ronnie Millsap. We had him as our showman that time. Then we started having for the people then to open with, we'd have some star come, Mel Tillis, that she's talking about. So I loved old Mel Tillis. He done a good job. And I loved the man. I had him in my theater 3 different times for a show, and then he turned around and come in and build a theater against me. So I got him started in Branson. Then he hardened my niece here because she's a little bit prettier than I am. So is that all right? So we had, of course, I had Ronnie Millsap. Had Ronnie to open the first time we did. I think it's April 3rd, I think, we opened with him. Then he came by the next time. I had him coming again, and he got there and set it all up for everybody. I had 2 shows sold out. And he got up there, and I was at the house, and they called and said, Ronnie wants to talk to you. So I went up there, and he said, Bob, I've got a sore throat. I'm not going to do the show tonight. You talk about a man upset. I had that thing sold out, people from Kansas City, Nebraska, people just from everywhere for the show that night. So we, as the Baldknobbers, went ahead and did 2 shows for them, and then I gave everybody their money back. And, of course, some of them, we didn't have the money there, so people mailed me in, and I'd mail them a check. It was all the awfulest thing ever was. And I really was a little bit irritated a little bit at him, because that was a tough thing to get through, all right. But I had Ray Price, Ray Price 3 different times. He was really good. And I had, a whole bunch of them from out everywhere. Connie Smith, I had her. Dolly Parton had her. She's kind of a pretty girl. So she's pretty good size. I know. I loved. She was one of the sweetest girls though I've ever met. She was really. When after the show, we all went over and got the pizza parlor, and they closed it up. And so she took our kids and went over in the corner booth and just had a ball with those kids. She was really a great girl. And then we was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Did a show one time. Did I tell that already? We was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they had 5 shows. The guy had seen our show there in Branson. He said, Bob, is there any way you guys want a road? And I said, yeah, we do. And finally bought a bus we traveled in. So we went to do the show, and they got up there and they had 5 shows. They had, what's her name? Had a girl, and then they had a girl and a man. Jan Howard was one of them, and the other man. And then 3rd was the Baldknobbers, and then 4th was Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton, and then the 5th one was Roy Acuff. Well, they did the other 2 shows. Now, I'm not bragging at all, because this was kind of a deal that we kind of liked. But we didn't want to tell nobody, but I'll tell you now. That's been about 40 years ago. But anyway, each had 45 minutes, and we took our 45 minutes, and they gave us a standing ovation and wouldn't quit. They wouldn't quit. And so we came back out and bowed and went off the stage and kept on. We come out and bowed. And the guy that booked us was up there, come to find out. He'd had other shows like that, 5, and each one had their 45 minutes and didn't get done. Well, we thought we was doing right, taking a bow, because people act like they liked us anyway. So the guy that had us up there stand off there, he said, get off, get off, get off. So I was talking to the guy that stood off a while ago. He did that, yeah. So we got off the stage, and then the next act was Porter Wagner, and he come out, and these first 2 numbers you messed up. First one, because we had got such a standing ovation, and you talk about some hillbillies feeling good, getting that kind of an ovation on. So Porter come on, and Roy Acuff come on, and after he's to get ready to do his, he said, well, you know what? It's hard for a legitimate band to do very good, isn't it, after them Baldknobbers? He was legitimate, you know. We wasn't legitimate, but he was. But anyway, we stole the show from him that night, some hillbillies. And then, of course, we did a lot of road shows. We just all around over the country. We bought a bus, traveled from state to state, and it's talking about Tammie here talking. That old bus would get kind of old, so you get there and set up and do a show. And I know all you entertainers out there did the same thing. You'd feel, tired and wish you didn't have it or whatever, and get there, and then the crowd is so good, it was all right. And then you had to drive all the way home. And that's the way I had one of my sons born from my wife, Sue. We was on the road and was at Iowa, and I think it was another state farther up, way up in North Iowa. Friday night, we got to a motel before we did our show, and Sue called me and said, "Bob, you're going to have to come home. Jeremy's going to be born." And I said, "Sue, we're here for 2 shows, 2 nights. Ain't no way I can take their shows and get away and not do the shows." So she said, "You have to, Bob." And I said, "Sue, you know I can't." And I've never done anything else for her since then. Because no, we went ahead and did the show Friday night in Iowa, thinking next was Wisconsin, probably anyway. I drove the bus home and got back in home about 7 the next morning, and I washed my face because I've been driving all night. Washed my face, got over to the hospital, and the doc come out of the room and said, "Bob, you got a big boy." And that's the way it happened. Was she waited till I got home to have Jeremy. And Jeremy's one of the sweetest kids. And naturally, you're going to say that for your own son. He's a doctor, in Branson, a doctor, and he's a good doctor, they tell me. I just don't believe in doctors because you ain't supposed to get sick. So, but he's people in Branson just love him. So, and he's got a little boy. He has had a little trouble with women, like. Anyway, I'll tell you trouble with your wife. Anyway, his first wife left him, and she married another guy later. Well, first she fell in love with this black man, and they went all around, a good guy, but they went to St. Louis and all. And finally she married another guy. They're doing good now, but I kind of hated that for the kids. And there was Jeremy one week, and then her the next week, and Jeremy the next. So I kind of feel sorry for them, but when they've got by, and the kids kind of got by, and then so he's a little boy that he married again, and a lot later, and he's 5 years old, and started school this year, and then they've got a girl that's SMS up here, SMU, that's a second year in college. So that's some of my story. Do you think
Now they're telling us they might want to ask us some questions.
Well, I can answer some
You
of
think
them.
we have any answers?
Well, you can help do it if I can't. So you got any questions? What else? There's one that I was going to, that driving up here, but I told it, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Anyway, sometimes I'm not a very smart feller. Anybody got a question?
Yes, Chris.
Talk about the comedy guide. Did you write a lot of that material, or did you just sit around and make it up as you went along?
The way we made it up as we went along. I know one time.
Even on Slim Whitman's show, Slim Wilson's show?
Yeah, well, Slim Wilson? Yeah, we just did a show. I had a show there. It wasn't the Baldknobbers then. Yeah. That was before I did the Baldknobbers, right? So I just, we went 5.5 years for the Branson Auction Company. So if you remember the Branson, so we did the show for them. And then what else?
Oh, no, somebody might have a question.
Isn't it nice to have a niece like this, that pretty? And her other sister she talked about, Tanya, is just as pretty. Yeah.
Mind sharing another story when you were working at KWTO in the studio?
Yeah, we worked there 5.5, but like I said, 6:15 in the morning, and I had a route that I run, and I'll tell you how busy I was. I had a route I run, and I'd come up in the truck, and for the sale and stuff, and then I'd do a show at 6:15 and go out and work all day, go back to Branson, do a show overnight. That's the reason I look like I do. And I'm supposed to be about 50 years old, but I probably look older than that.
Chris, oh no, there it is. Yes.
Do you have a all-time favorite song that you just love to perform?
Oh, the best song there is Amazing Grace. That's the sweetest song there. Because I love the Lord, like Tammie's talking about. We love the Lord. Dad was a preacher, and you had to love the Lord when you went at home. But I don't know, there's just so many songs that had hard to call it just a favorite, but I just love all songs. And I still lead to singing in our church. So, do you sing? I was going to invite you down to sing in my church, yeah.
Chris.
What do you think of the big put? I came back from Dallas and to work in Branson in the early 90s, and what did you think of that whole deal that went on at Branson today?
Well, I think they've overdone it. They're still overdoing it, I think it's coming in now. That little boy with that wheel, Burns Ferris wheel, I think he has really done wrong. And there's some of the shows that's not drawn very good. And of course, we started when it was needed back in 1960. Of course, about all that came at Branson at that time was just fishermen. And we'd gone 6 years for the David Drennan came in about where Presley's is. Now, I know I'm not talking about Presley's, but they'll tell you they started that show. They didn't. Drennan's the one that started that show. And they started 6 years after we had started the Baldknobbers. And then the Presleys was 8 years after we had started. They took over, and their son was the Drennan. And he married the oldest Presley girl. And they, of course, had a little bit of trouble there. And Mr. Drennan, the man that had to build the theater, he just built a flat floor like this. And they did the show for a couple of years. And then they got into it, and I could tell you more on that. But
was that over there by the dam?
No, it's right where they're at now, where Presley's is now.
I worked for him for years. So I know all the stories.
Yeah. But they got after us for building there across from them a little ways out. They didn't like that, but like somebody told me, said, Bob, you guys done the best thing there was, because when you have a show across the street and you're just all drawn in the people. And then that's what started. We only built our Baldknobbers, we only built 900 seats, and we got to filling it up so bad. And in fact, they opened at night, and we really had a mess that night, but all we did is just put on a free show for everybody the opening night of our new Baldknobber building, and it filled up at 4:30 in the afternoon. And people, the line traffic, people from Kansas City, stuff were there. They got mad at us. Really, some people really got mad at us, but we could. If I'd have known it to start with, we'd have had 2 shows, but we never thought about it filling up like that. But it filled up. Would have filled up 2 times if we'd have done it, but it's already too late, to do the 8 o'clock show, and then you'd have to been 11 o'clock for the next show. So, but that was opening night.
When did the Campbells show up?
It was years. Well, they just started coming in one at a time. Then after that, and somebody told me one time there was almost 100 shows, but it's really built. It's got down now to the show. And then after 20 years at the Baldknobbers, I was going to say that after 20 years, there was 3 of us brothers, and they all had one brother start drinking real heavy and coming on the stage, and I love the Lord too much, so I decided to get out. And I got out and I asked him, I said, now, you guys going to want me to not build another theater here? Or, no, if you want to build another, it's all right with us. Well, me and another guy had a motel in town, Silver Sleeper at that time, and he called me when he knew I was in trouble. After I got out of the Baldknobbers, I was down, probably down about as much as a person could be down. And so he called me one day from Kansas, he and I was in together on a motel. He said, Bob, I've never been to Nashville. Would you go with us to Nashville? You know the ropes down there. And I said, well, yeah, I ain't doing nothing. So he came down from Kansas, and we went to Nashville. So they had a show out on the parking lot out there with all the different entertainers. And they got to coming out, and they'd just be a hat or a coat or something, just like all the entertainers, Mel Tillis or Roy Cuff or whatever. And they'd come out and just do a chorus of it and go off. Another come out and do a chorus and go off. Another come out and do a chorus. And I liked that. So all the way home with my wife, I said, I've got to build another show. So I came back home and bought the land where Clay Cooper is now. And then after I got out, I had a guy that wanted to lease the theater. I said, you'd never make it. You don't know the music business. You got to know a little bit about it before you go in like that. Well, he stayed a month, and they went in and tore some stuff in my theater down, broke a glass door on the front to get in, and I was a little bit irritated over that. So Jimmy Osmond called me from Utah and said, Bob, I hear you got a theater for lease. And I said, I sure do. So Jimmy Osmond came down, and he said, I'd like to lease it for 5 years if I want to make it. And then if I like it for 5 years, then I'll buy your theater. I said, give me the money. Yeah, so I got out. So, yeah, he came down and loved it. Had a good show if you saw the Osmond show. They're good entertainers.
Bob, could you tell us a little bit about on KWTO some of the acts that you did and some of the performances and maybe the sponsors and so forth like that?
Yeah, the Auctioneers was a sponsor of their show, the Branson Auctioneer, and one of them is my brother-in-law, and my sister sang with me, Margie. She sang with me at the time. She's in heaven now. In fact, all of our 11 in our family, we're down to her mom and one other sister and me. And I told the girls one day, my two sisters, and I said, boy, they left the best looking man to live instead of the other boys. No, Joanne said, her mother, yeah, I think we're a lot better looking than you are. So there I go again. But I enjoyed the entertainment business.
Bob, you've done so many different things, but certainly as an entertainer, you've done thousands of shows. If you could share with us, could you tell us some of, or a couple of your most embarrassing moments on stage?
Well, some of them wouldn't be good to tell. Listen, everybody's done it, I know. We was doing a show at West Plains one time, and one of them, he had to let it go. And oh my, was it? Oh, was it? And we stood at the end of a gym, and then we went to the dressing room at intermission time, and we got after him and been on the stage. But you can't help it, I guess. It's just there wasn't a whole lot of things. Say one time, Jim, my brother Droopy Doors, fell off the stage one time, and he's showing out and fell off the stage. Didn't really hurt him because he had Droopy Doors. If you ever seen him, he had Droopy Door way down there, the britches. But then I can't think of any really funny things. I don't know.
Tell them where you guys got your names, the Bobolink and George Agonite and Droopy Doors.
We had done this at home, and George, you may ever remember the commercial on KY3 of the Empire Gas commercial. My brother George, Lyle is his name, he done that commercial, and Presley's had went up and made their commercial, and the guy that owned the plant didn't take it, so they'd ask us to come up and make a commercial. And we went up and made a commercial, and I need to brag it again, but they bought our commercial. And George, right at the end of it, if you remember, George would say, Empire Gas is anomalous. He didn't have no teeth in his mouth, and he's trying to say economical, and he just messed that word up, and it made that hit. So we did about 70 commercials then after that for Empire Gas commercial, yeah. And of course we had people loved the Baldknobbers. We had one guy over by here in St. Louis, and that man, he loved us more than he loved his own self, I think. And he cried like a baby when I left the theater, so I guess I was wanted anyway after I left. So I got back into business, got back in the bobolinks then after, and I just couldn't stand it. But then after I was in there about 10 years, people asked, well, I'd got older too. I'm a little older than 50 years old. Could you guess how much I old? I'm 88 years old now. I'll be 89 in February. And still going. I still don't do much anymore. I got retarded. You know about being retarded, do you?
Why'd you look at me?
I just thought you was feeling sorry for me. Yeah. No, it was time to retire. I'd done 30 years in the show, 5 years at the KWTO. And we did that for 5.5 years every morning. That's when you're really busy then. And we was really busy at that time. And
Well, who's doing the Baldknobbers now? Because I see their commercial. Is that your son?
no, it's my nephew and then his son. They're doing it now. They've hired other people and call themselves the famous Baldknobbers now. We wasn't famous, but they're they're famous now. But
How long was Stub Meadows with you?
pardon me?
How long was Stub Meadows with you?
Stubb never was with me. After I left, he was with came to the Baldknobbers.
It was well over 25 years,
Yeah.
I believe.
He was a great guy, wasn't he? Yeah, funny. He was really funny. George was funny till he started drinking, my brother, and we couldn't straighten it out. And I'll never forget, we was down in Shreveport, Louisiana doing a show, and we did 2 shows Friday night and 2 shows Saturday night for Shreveport. Well, after the show Friday night, they went out. Some of them did, out. They'll call it, I guess some people call it honky-tonk, and they went out. And my brother Lyle that got to drinking so bad, they almost threw him in jail. He almost got thrown in jail. And I was in the bathroom, and he and one of my other guys had come upstairs. We was upstairs in the dressing room. And I was sitting in the bathroom, and I heard them talking out there about what had happened, that they almost got thrown in jail, that the place says at. And I don't know where this at. I just knew they'd had trouble. So after they was talking a little bit, and I got up and walked out of the bathroom, and Lyle's face went as long as a barrel. And he knew I'd heard what he said about what they'd done, and they'd got drunk and got in trouble. So that's when I decided I was going to get out of the Bobolink. So they made it through that night and back home. And then Lyle come to me and said, "Bob, I know you heard what I said, but I'll tell you what, I'll never do it again. But, if you're going to do it, he did it again." So I got out, and I was the sickest man I guess probably ever was, and I got out of the Baldknobbers. So we had so much fun, met so many great people. I never seen a bad people in the entertainment. And after I left, they started having trouble at the theater, some trouble. I just heard this one night they had 3 people that was drunk, and they got running around the theater just trying to catch them to get them out. And they're just running down the aisles and all over the theater. Now, if I'd have been there, that would have ruined me. I mean, let something like that happen. But that goes along with it if you go to doing that. You need to do what you're supposed to do. And I've not always done that, so don't talk to my wife. So I've not always done that. But I love the Lord, and I love to portray Him when I'm doing my shows, and I always have. We had a guy at Twin Cities in Minnesota, and he'd been down and said, "Bob, I've been trying for 5 years to get your show up. I had the Baldknobbers, my other group. For Bobolinks, I haven't had your show, and I've tried to get you to." And it was a big tavern, and I just didn't do shows. And then, because I had a family of 6 kids, and they're square dancers, 4 kids and a mom and dad, and I didn't want to take them to a place like that. And he said, "Bob, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take this place and I'll fill anything that looks like it's a tavern. I'll put covers over it. I'll make sure that nobody, and I'll big long hall. I've got a big long hall. If you'll bring your show up, then, and I could tell you a million stories like this, but I said, if you'll do that, send me a contract." So he sent me a contract, and I signed it and sent it back to him. And then we had a show in Iowa on the way up. And then it was going on Saturday night then in Twin Lakes, Minnesota. So, we got into Iowa, and it's snowing to beat the band. And I was driving. I had another driver, and it's a slick. He wanted me to drive because he's my bus. So I went up and drove us into Iowa, and we did a show at Iowa. And at intermission time, a highway patrol come in and said, "Who's Bob?" And I said, "That's me." And he said, "Got called just a while ago. The highway on up to Twin Cities, you can't get there. The highway, I-35 is closed. You can't get there." So I've always believed that the Lord took care of it. I didn't go do a show in that place anyway. I wasn't supposed to. But I've been to a lot of shows all over the United States, yeah.
They're telling us we have to cut it off.
Cut it off. I'm ready. I knew I could talk as long as you want me to.
Are we good?
We certainly want to thank Tammie and Bob for were really
You bet.
educational and
Thank you.
entertaining.
And there's another 5 hours if you want it.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much.
You bet.